think a lot of people who are locked down, right? So they would be growing vegetables and fruits. So I'm growing the tomato plant, and I think I've focused only on one of it. What I really am like, I've never done growing or anything of that kind. So if you when you read up on it, there is so much to read up. For example, there is something called as an indeterminate variety of the tomato plant. There's a
Mm-hmm.
determinate variety, and both of them, the growing strategy is different. You got to know what the tomato is to grow it very, very well. The other thing is that the tomato plant has roots all along its stem.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want the plant to grow really, really fast, what you have to do is you have to keep on putting the plant lower and lower into the seed, so that a lot of the stem is under the soil. What happens is, by design, the roots start to now capture the nutrient more faster, and your plant
Mm-hmm.
grows faster. So initially you will see that there's just like a small seedling, but you have to keep on putting it inside the soil as the plant grows, so that uh, the the roots which are there on the stem itself also try and get nutrients from the soil. The other thing I'm also reading up on is how does the plant prioritize what to do. So now, when it's a seedling, there's a different thing that the plant will prioritize. But when
Mm-hmm.
it's in the flowering stage, there is something else that will prioritize. So how does the plant really know what to do?
Right.
I mean, where is it coded, and how do you really, how does the plant figure out what to do now? I mean, at initially, when there are only leaves, the priority is to grow bigger and bigger and more leaves. But once you reach a certain level of
Mm-hmm.
the leaves, the plant then starts to prioritize growing flowers. So how does this
Mm-hmm.
switch happen? Why
Mm-hmm.
does that switch happen? So I'm trying to discover that as well. Just keeping it focused on the tomato plant.
Right.
Um, and I think that I mean, I go on the terrace and then I find that my DTH dish is, it's like not being used. So I had aluminum tape. So it's like really shiny tape. I just put it on top of the dish. I just removed it, brought it home, put it on top, and then I could make a solar cooker.
Oh, nice.
Unfortunately,
Amazing.
now in Mumbai it has started to rain, so there is no
Uh,
sun.
mm-hmm.
But then I was able to burn wood with it, with the focus of the
Oh,
sunlight coming
amazing,
down.
amazing. Yeah, yeah. And
So
talking
yeah,
talking about your tomato plants, yeah. I mean, like
uh-huh,
nature is the best engineer, right? Like, and there is a
yeah,
lot to
yeah, yeah.
learn from nature, even in
From
terms of
nature.
computational thinking. And you're talking about how to prioritize a specific resource. And I think
As your state changes, so as your state changes in your growth, what will you prioritize?
right, right.
It's interesting. I mean, if you look at only the tomato plant, like
Okay,
the amount of things that nature has put into it,
got it, got it.
mind blowing.
Quickly wanted to tell kids that Rupin is a hardware hacker here, so he hacks
Yeah,
things up and he makes stuff. And we're just
yeah.
talking about what Rupin does in his free
Spare time.
time while we are
Like
waiting for
Sunday today is free
yeah,
time. So
yeah. So while we are waiting for everyone to join, and then we'll be starting about today's agenda. Um, and we're also figuring out how to enable the chat option so that we can communicate well with you. So if I quickly try to tell what uh, all
hey,
right,
Rajiv, I think your video is not open.
yeah,
Okay,
yes, perfect.
okay.
I'm just refreshing the YouTube page so that
Comments come.
I can see the chats option. All right. So chat is on and we are live. Good morning, everyone. Um, just wanted to start by summarizing what we did in the last session, and then talking about what we'll be doing in this and the coming session. So yesterday's session we basically talked about how to think about a problem which really pains you, and what would be your approach from starting with a problem to converting it into a design challenge for yourself, brainstorming with friends, family members, and then coming with an approach to a solution. Right, Rupin?
Yeah, we talked about the skills of observation.
Right.
We talked about how do you now go and talk to your users? How do you identify who your users will be?
Hmm.
And then putting your design challenge with the question, how might we? So that was one of the things that was left as homework for the participants to do.
Right. Right. So after yesterday's session, we expect you to at least have a problem in your mind, in your head, that you know what pains you or what pains people around you. You have a problem, you have converted into a design challenge, and you have at least 2 to 3 approaches. Remember, like, never take a leap of faith. Don't go with just one solution in head. You have at least 2 to 3 different approaches or ideas or solutions to approach the problem. um, Quickly wanted to tell what today's session is going to be about. Today's session is going to be about how to start converting your idea into a prototype. And a prototype is something which is the first version of what you are building, right? So we're going to talk about how to start prototyping your idea. Just quickly wanted to sort of like, give a word of warning to everyone. Like, please do not copy paste chat messages. We actually capture all the chats and we go through all your questions, and we'll respond to you. Do not copy paste chat messages, and be like, I mean, maintain the etiquette. So that's a humble appeal that uh, please don't copy paste chat messages, and please be responsive so that everything that you type,
I think
we are
Rajiv
listening through.
schedule froze.
Hello. Yeah, am I audible? All right. All right. So yeah. So let's get started on that note. Let's get started. Let's make the conversations in the chat as productive as possible. All right. So the journey from having a solution to actually building something is not immediate. Like, I would discourage people to have a solution in mind and immediately build something on it, immediately write code, immediately build an app. I would discourage students from doing this. What would be the right approach then? Tech is never the complete solution. It's tech is not the solution. It's never the solution. Tech is only an enabler. So it's only one of the tools which can help you execute the solution. Like, so you might have a solution in mind, and tech can help you in executing that solution. It can never be the solution. Like, building an app for something is never going to solve a problem. If that would be the case, every problem would be so easy to solve. So tech is just one of the tools to help you execute the problem. If I try to get you to imagine a scenario, you might have a lot of tools in your tool set, right? And like, let's say you have a hammer, which is tech, and you cannot hammer everything. Like, at every problem you cannot use a hammer. Like, you have to understand which tool to use for what scenario. If you start using hammer, let's say, for if you have a repair work in your house, for every repair work, if you start using a hammer, it's not going to be very constructive. So when you visualize technology, or when you visualize building a tech solution, writing code, building an app, imagine it just as a tool to help you execute your solution, and not as the solution. We're going to talk about what it means in detail. So the first approach, when first thing that you should do once you have an idea in your mind, an idea to solve the problem that you have, is detail out your ideas. Like, and that you can do using thought experiment. How will that solution work? Think in your head about what will be the different flow of how your idea will be executed, and using these thought experiments, you can sort of like detail out what your solution would look like. Who will be the stakeholders? Who will be the people involved in building out your solution? What else resources will you need? What other resources will you need? So detail out your ideas, and you can write it on a piece of paper. I love writing on a piece of paper my thoughts, when I'm detailing, I try to sort of like build mind maps and write out, even in a story form. I write out, what will the idea or the solution look like on paper. Rupini is going to talk about how one of our students, detailed the solution for one of the applications or games the student was building.
So Aaron Ghosh, he was one of our Silicon Valley winners from the pro level, and he created a game about a warrior caught up in a war zone. He named the game as Escape. So this should, I mean, yesterday I think there were questions coming in whether will a game, can we make a game, can we make an application? So here is an example for participants who have that question in their mind: does the game really win the Silicon Valley challenge? And it does. So the detailing that Aaron went through was he imagined that how does the war zone look like, and then he started to draw and sketch characters that will be there, what kind of machines like an aeroplane or a helicopter, the vision that he wanted to have in his game, and the backgrounds that he will require. Is it a night scene? Is it the scene of a morning? What are the kind of vehicles will the army have? What kind of vehicles will I have as a player? And then he started to collect all these images from the web. So he started to collect enemies and people, like a warrior with a gun, the aeroplane and the helicopter. So all this goes into detailing. So when you start writing the story, you will have all these creative thoughts come out. Uh, okay, my character is gonna be like this. He's gonna wear a mask. He's not gonna wear a mask. Only when you start to detail will all these fine details come out. Yeah, yeah. That's how
Right.
you should detail. That's how you should be thinking in terms of detail.
So why don't we detail an idea right now, Rupin? So
Yeah, yeah.
I remember yesterday we had a very good sort of like a problem statement from a student, which talked about everyone is surrounded
That news.
by sad news,
Yeah, Tejas's idea.
yeah,
Tejas's
and
idea.
how do we, yeah, Tejas idea, yeah, and how do we so what are the two three solutions, so quickly from the audience, what are the two three solutions that we can look for solving this problem? um, uh, yeah, quickly waiting to hear from the audience, what are the two three solutions you would have in mind to solve a problem where you could help people distract from the sad news which is all around?
So
Okay, not
going back
listening.
to Rajiv's point also, that tech is not the solution. Please be open to putting a solution which is not tech, right?
Right.
We gotta do that introspection as well. That the
I
hammer
mean,
need not always be the hammer that is solved.
right. And people are coming up with like listen to music, like remedies.
Yes,
I mean, like yoga, happiness, uh, like make jokes, make comedy app, which are all interesting ideas.
interesting as
So
well.
so yeah. So what I would also think is getting more positive news, right? Like enforcing more positive news in terms of the newspapers that you read, or and the sort of like the apps which feed you news. How do we filter out more positive news from them? So you can also, so there are a lot of news articles which are sent through you through different apps, right? Can we build something which will filter out the positive news, and so you can sort of like proportion how much negative news you want to hear and how much positive news want to hear, what you want you to get, right?
So one of the ways I think, I mean, I believe that the idea could be detailed is the app could ask you what does your mood feel like today. So
Mm-hmm.
I would consider this as maintaining balance in life, where I either have, I mean, not too much positive and not too much negative, but trying to maintain a healthy balance. So if the app really knew how I'm feeling today, it could be changed in a way where, based on my outlook and my idea and my mental state, it would feed me the different kind of news. For
Right.
example, if I am extremely happy, extremely positive, it would try and increase a little bit of the negative news, because it's not that negative news is bad, it's just that it feels. But knowing about it is also extremely important. We can't just throw away all negative news. Uh,
Right.
it also has its own value.
Right.
So
Right.
knowing my state, the app could
Mm-hmm.
ask me, "How do you feel today?" And
Right.
after that it would try and balance out the positive and the negative news on its own.
Right, and this was a tech way of solving it. What could be the other non-tech ways, Rupin, of solving this problem? I'm hearing some of the uh, some of the ideas from students as well,
Hmm.
like for example, yoga and building that sense of calmness in people, with where you sort of like learn to accept bad news in a very equitable way. So
Right.
yeah, so yoga is one. Listening to music are some other ideas which students
I
have
think drawing and
come up with.
coloring mandalas is also something that a lot of the people do. Like drawing
Right,
is itself
right.
an activity. You know.
So these are ideas. Now what this stage would look like is detailing them. How would you sort of, for example, if I talk about creating mandals, how would you sort of like create these mandals, and how would you distribute it to people, and how would this, and this could be physical distribution. You can have a
Yeah.
designer who, you could design these mandals, and
And
you
you
could
print it
start
out and give it away.
print it out and give it away to people, and to sort of like spread more joy and positivity among people. And all these are ideas, and how do you detail those ideas? How do you sort of like create these processes, and sort of like build your solution, is what detailing is. So detailing is in your head. You do thought experiments. You think through what the process of executing your idea would look like, and you sort of like write sort of like detail the idea. Yeah.
The other idea, I think, when you talked about saying we can distribute the mandalas, so the thing that comes into mind is I could very easily try this out I mean, not in these times where I can get people together, but I could, I mean, there is a website called Meetup, and on Meetup, you can start a group free of cost. You can go there and put up, it's a mandala meetup, and just give it away to people to print out at their home, and they can try, and you can start getting feedback. it'll
Right.
it'll tell us some really good insights into the
Correct.
uh, to
So the idea is that there could be both tech and non-tech ways of
non-tech.
solving a problem.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
tech is just a tool for you to help execute your
Express
solution.
and express.
Yeah, yeah, and in detailing your idea, you basically do thought experiments, and you imagine how would your idea in field look like when you execute the idea. How would it look like? And you go and write it down of the details of it, right? The next stage, once you have the details in your head or on paper, the next stage is prototyping your idea. And I'm going to talk about what prototyping is. Prototyping is actually building something without writing a single piece of code. So you build something without even writing a piece of code, without actually spending time building that stuff. You actually start executing it. You start executing your idea. And how does it look like? I'm going to give you a famous example of how a company called IBM did it. So around 30 years back, I
1960s.
yeah,
Not
1960s,
1960s.
yeah, 1970s actually, yeah.
70s. Huh.
Yeah. So IBM had a great idea. Not everyone was able to use computers, because not everyone could type. Not everyone could learn how to type, and typing was slow. And so IBM had a great idea. This is even before Alexa and Siri were there, right? Like long time back. And 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 so IBM thought, why don't we make a computer which uses speech, human speech, to actually type out text. And at those times there was no speech to text engines, and so IBM, before even spending resources and into the whole effort of building a speech to text engine, would have cost IBM millions and billions of dollars, right? So even before starting to build that kind of system or engine, IBM decided to do a small prototyping experiment. They put up a human behind a computer which would type text for another human. So another human would speak, and a typist would just type out. And what IBM
They couldn't
realized
see
through
each
the,
other. They couldn't see
yeah,
each other.
they couldn't see each other. They couldn't see each other. So the person felt that as if I am typing and computer is automatically typing text.
Yeah.
And what they realized through this experiment was that uh, uh, a speech-based operating system, or talking and writing out text, is not really that human friendly. because soon, after speaking, a human's throat gets parched, and they don't like to use a computer anymore. So they realized even before actually spending money on it, they decided that this is not such a great idea as it sounds, and they decided to just limit the amount of research that they are doing on speech to text. And even now, for example, even now when the speech to text engines are, they are not really a very big part in our lives. And that was the reason which IBM identified at that time without spending a lot of money on it. So yeah, so that is what is prototyping is, like building something without actually writing even a single piece of code. You can actually quickly test out your idea, if your idea works or not. Rupin here will take you through an example of how a student prototyped their product.
Yeah. So we had one of our students, again a Silicon Valley winner, Agastya. He is the creator of the application Pet. Interesting problem that faced himself, again centered towards himself, is where he has a pet. The name of the pet is Oreo, and he was traveling to outside of India, and he realized that he couldn't carry and take his pet along with him. It wasn't feasible for him to do at that time. So how does he leave his pet at home alone and go to travel? uh, then he discovered that there are places where would take care of your pet for a fee that you pay them, and he found it to be expensive. And then he had that idea that, you know what, I can give it to a friend of mine who also has a pet. He can take care of him. And he asked him, just called him and said, you know what, I'm traveling. Can you take care of Oreo for a couple of days for me? And the friend said, yes, why not? I mean, it'll be a lot of fun. I'm having two pets. I think two is better than one when it comes to pets. So he really understood that yes, there is something that he has there, uh, which says that yes, people who are pet lovers would be keen to take care of somebody else's pet, rather than going to a pet. What I don't know what it's called. I think it's called a nursery, wherein the pet is left there for a while and really taken care of, right? So it's a, I think if a pet goes to that pet nursery, it's like a royal treatment that the pet gets. So they charge a lot, and he figured out that there are people who are pet lovers, and they would be keen to take care of the pet. The only challenge is people don't know who the other pet lover is. I mean, you may know a few people in your own circle, but it's possible that you may not know all of them.
And not
How
every
do
time, not every
Not
time
every
they're
time they
available.
may be free. They may be free. Yeah, I mean, if you are traveling, it's possible they are also traveling. So it's not always true that you find somebody. So how do you get all the people together and figure out? He did the prototype. He really
Yeah.
understood the idea that, this works. It
Right.
will work.
And prototyping helped Agastya identify what are the other problems in executing the idea,
Yeah.
right? Like in sort of like building the whole idea or app which Agastya later built. What are the other problems that could emerge? So our suggestion is, like, prototype your idea quickly to identify what are the other things, to understand the problem better, and what are the other things that you could face. Um, all right. So let's look at, let's take the example of Mundals again, and let's look at what idea prototype might look like. Like, how could you prototype if people would actually be happier by sort of like by the Mundals that you create, and would that bring more positivity in people? How would you do that? How would the idea prototype might look like?
So Rajiv, the problem is currently the same, that how do we bring more positivity in people's lives? And the idea that we are going forward with is that uh, mandalas as a way where you are coloring stuff, it brings that positivity in you. It brings more knowing what is happening in the moment and cutting off everything around you. Sort of like meditation, but not exactly meditation. So that is what we are trying to prototype. We are trying
Right.
to find out if this is the right idea
Yeah,
that
this is the right idea. Yeah. and
should we
and
go
and
forward with.
and what I would do is if I had to prototype this idea, I would find mandals online, like which can be printed. I would print them. I would identify people who share the same pain as me about the sad news that surrounds them. I would give them mandals to color every morning, maybe, or at a time that they would like to, and I would do a survey to understand if ask them questions to understand if they feel happier or better than what they were, and that would help me understand if the idea works even before I write any piece of code for this. How does that sound? Hello, Rupin, are you there with me?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here. Yeah, it sounds
Yeah,
good.
yeah. So to summarize, prototype is executing something without writing any piece of code, executing your idea without writing even a single piece of code. So without writing any code, you go and you execute your solution and see how it works, and what are the different things that you can learn when you execute the idea. All right. The next stage would be to envision your final product. Now that you have prototyped and you had more learnings about the product that you're building, the idea that you're building, now you can envision what your final product would look like. So, for example, in my head, the design of bundles look like that. I'll write a program which creates printable bundles, right, which create different kinds of bundles. I would maybe have a email address. I would have people who subscribe to my bundle collection. I would collect their email addresses and send them an email every morning to color their bundles, take a printout and color their bundles. That would be the final product in my head. Yeah, so the next stage is to envision your final product of your idea, uh, to sort of like envision what would your final idea look like.
So for me, I think the Mandal's idea, if I think about my own idea, I would think about it as my vision would be that it's an application where, let's say I've written it in code.org or Thunkable or even P5 using the canvas, and writing code, I can generate my mandalas, right? I
Right.
can
So
generate the
so yeah. Yeah.
myself.
So we have some questions on chat here where
Uh-huh.
students actually don't understand what mandal is. So I'll quickly share my screen and I'll show them what mandal looks like.
Mandala is.
Yeah. Okay. So if everyone can see here,
Yeah, I can.
these are called mandals, and yeah, so these are called mandals, and like psychologists believe that some coloring mandals are therapeutic. So it helps you sort of like calm your mind, become happier, more stable. So these are what we're talking about. So these are mandals, and hopefully now that you understand what mandals are, what the conversation that we're having would make more sense. Is what we're talking about is yeah, they are pretty, and they help sort of like calm the mind. A lot of people who meditate actually envision mandals in their head and they meditate. And yeah, so okay, I need to switch back to the presentation mode. All right. So what we're talking about, the final product that we are having in our head, is where we create these kind of bundles, through a computer program, and then have email addresses of people who want to
Subscribe to us.
subscribe to these bundles, who want to color these bundles, and we send a printable version of this to people. So that would be the final product in my head. So I would also encourage you to think of the final product that you have in your head about your idea, right? So that is what we would like you to think, and some of it might or might not involve tech, right? Perfect. And then next stage is to identify in your whole idea process. So now that you have envisioned a solution, envisioned a product, how can tech make your execution faster or more efficient, or more scalable. That means you can reach to more people, or the idea can be made cheap. So for example, I could have gone ahead with making taking printouts of bundles on paper and sending it to people, right? I could go physically sending it to people, right? And now
But how
what
many
when I,
people can you effectively reach?
exactly. So now when I think, I have to think, can tech make this easy? Can, for example, tech make making bundles easy? Right? And so there are different ways I could make bundles using technology. I can sort of like a computer program which creates these patterns on its own, right? Or I can write a software which sort of allows bundle creators like designers and artists to send their bundles to me using tech, right? So that way I could create these bundles through tech, and that would be maybe faster and more efficient. I could also use tech to reach out to people who are in need of these bundles, right? And someone in the chat said, "Sir, what if they don't have a printer?" Very good. That's a problem. That's a problem again,
Very
which you
great, great thinking. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, which you need
Definitely.
to solve. And so maybe you're not doing it. So if you're thinking this problem, maybe you're not doing it on paper. You're creating a software which allows you to color on the screen. It's a very good thought. And so yeah. So while you're sort of like building your solution, you might come across several problems. And remember the what we talked about in the last session: problems, brainstorming, get talking to users, getting feedback. This is a feature. This is something which you will have to do all over again and again in every stage of your solution building. So so
So
so
as
yeah. So
the input came in, like, so you will discover as you go ahead in your application that printing the bundles, you are not able to influence a lot of people because of that. It's dependent on the person having a printer. So that is a problem you'll have to solve again. You'll have to figure out how am I going to solve it. The larger problem should not allow you to defocus. The larger problem is you want to make it so that people feel positive about it.
right.
That always is something that is at the back of your mind, and then you have to solve the problem going back and forth.
Right. So yeah. So the whole idea is that once you have a whole solution in your head, you identify processes, you identify places where you can use tech as a tool to make it better and to make it faster. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
All
when
right.
you talk about Rajiv, just something that comes into my mind is that when you talk about this idea where you could have independent designers creating mandalas for people to consume and they can color, right? This is an analogous setting. We are just saying that okay, somebody has a specific skill which
Mm-hmm.
could be driving a car, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
in the case of Uber, or in this case, it is where a person is great at sketching and great at drawing. So we are trying to also bring in that element of learning from an example of somebody else, like the
Mm-hmm.
analogous setting, where it could be that a
Mm-hmm.
designer would design it for you, and you would
Mm-hmm.
just be somebody who is distributing the mandalas. So it's
Right.
it's the other way of looking at it, and how it all ties back to the presentation we had here.
Got it. I'm getting a lot of I'm seeing a lot of YouTube comments where students are saying, what if they don't have a printer? What they don't have? What they Why would they download the app if they don't have if they can already find so many bundles on Google? For that, what I would say is that you should always have a targeted user in mind when you are thinking of a solution. You should always have a targeted user. Who are you targeting to? You cannot create a solution for everyone, right? So if you're creating a solution for someone who doesn't even have a phone, you will not build an app, and then you'll go with a paper solution, right? And the solution would look very different than if you're creating a solution for someone who have mobile phones. So in the end, what I'd like to summarize is that technology should not be visualized as the solution. It can be a part of the complete solution, but it cannot be the solution. You have to think about who you're targeting to, what does your solution look like in its finished stage, and then what parts of the solution could be made faster, made more efficient, made more scalable and affordable using tech. All right. So the next stage which Rupin will take you through is how to build a prototype remember, this is different from prototype. This is a prototype. How do you build a prototype for your idea?
Yeah. So, what is a prototype? Okay, so there are stages in prototyping where you build something. Let's say you are building a robot, and let's say it's a robot on one wheel. We can't see the other wheel. So this robot can balance left to right and front and back. Right? It's really impossible to balance on one wheel, but it is possible. Clowns do it all the time on a unicycle. And if you are building this robot, so your prototyping stage will go from something that looks like a robot, which will be like a final form, something that works like it, and the next one would be that if you give it to the user can test it in their environment. So these are some of the stages in your prototyping. So first, what you build is look like, this is how it looks, not built yet. The second one is, okay, I've already built it, it works a little bit. There are a few bugs in it, I have to solve them. I go ahead and solve them. And then the next one is, I give it to my user to try, right?
Yeah.
So in today's, I think till the end of it, we will look at the first stage, which is looks like. It looks like an application that I have to build, which is
Right.
what we will do in the prototype.
So if I understand the idea, your prototype need not be a finished product. It can just be the first version of it, right?
First version of it, the
First version of it.
minimum something that I have to make, so that I can convince my user who I'm going to talk to or give to, that you know what, I'm building this, give me feedback.
Right, right, right. And so what we would like you to do is take the whole idea of your product and divide it into three features: must haves,
Stages.
good to have, and don't have.
Oh,
Must have means your product should definitely have this, and without this, it is not going to work. The good to have is that the features in your product which will make it better, like more, it'll sort of like better the user experience of the product, but it will not drastically, so it is not something that your product will fail because of that. So what we would like you to focus is on must have. What are the most essential features which without which the product will not function, and that's your prototype.
so the way
Building.
really to identify the must have, good to have, and don't have. Let's say you build everything in your product and you show it to your user. For the must have, the user will have a very strong emotion. You know what? I really like this.
Mhm.
For the good to have, they may have, okay, it works, doesn't work, doesn't matter. And they don't have, they don't care about. So tap into that emotion of your user when you show them the prototype. The user will say, wow, this is amazing. So that's a must have. It's very, very clear to you. It's a must have. The good to have, the user will say, okay, I maybe I think I like it. Or if half of them may like it, half of them may not like it. So it becomes a good to have. They don't have, nobody likes it. They say,
Mhm. Mhm.
to identify what's a must have, good to have, don't to have,
Right.
don't have. Uh, you can ask that question yourself, because the problem is starting with I. So that I
Mhm.
should really tell you what I need right now. What is the must
Mhm.
have I should have?
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
the product that brings the must have, there's a term for it. It's called an MVP, a minimum viable product. It's the most basic. Viable means yes, it works, and it's a product. So it's called an MVP. You'll hear a lot about this term when people talk about products. It's called a minimum viable product.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So what we expect from you in our Silicon Valley submission is a MVP. It need not be a finished product. It need not have everything in it. It just needs to have what you absolutely need to for your idea to sort of have a to function, right?
True.
And
Yeah.
and Rupen, if we come back to the example of the Mandal app that we were talking about to
Mhm.
spread positivity, um, what do you think would be the must-haves in that case, and what would be the good to have?
So I think the good to have would be that I have a login, because it doesn't matter to have a login. I
Yeah.
think in the Mandalas app, if you're making an app for it, the login is not necessary, because you're not capturing any fundamental information about the parent. You don't
Right.
even need to know that the person, right?
Right.
But a very, very must have would be that you must be able to give them at least one mandala a day, a
Yeah.
must have feature.
Yeah.
Uh,
And then another must have feature is they should be able to color it, right? Either in your app or outside it, but they should be able to
they
color it.
must be able to either color it in your app, or if they are not that tech savvy, they may able to download a PDF that they can
Right.
print, or
Right.
instructions
Hmm.
of how you could draw it yourself.
Right. Oh,
Yeah,
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That could be done too. So,
you
so
could draw it.
these are the only must-have features, and then everything else, login, maybe scoring system for them, maybe able to vote color, like who who has the best colored mandal. All these are good to haves, and are really needed in the MVP. Am I right, Rupin?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
think
so we
that
could think
that
of, yeah, we could think of a lot of features, and the app would be good with all those features, but the must haves would only be these two things: that ability to send a mandal every day, maybe, or and ability for people to color them either by taking a printout or in the app itself. So
yeah.
that's how you think about creating minimal viable products, or prototypes of your for your idea. All right. So once you have a prototype in your head, once you have what you are actually going to build, what are the features that you're going to build in your MVP, or in your prototype, the next stage is wireframing your prototype. So Rupin is going to take you again through what does wireframing a prototype look like. Yeah.
So wireframing a prototype is fundamentally just drawing what your screens look like. So now we have identified at this point that our solution is an app, right? So we've
Mm-hmm.
identified that. What I just draw is how does my phone look like, right? So if you see, I have just a rectangle. That's what a phone is today.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can do that on a graph paper as well, or you can do it on any paper you want, a line
Mm-hmm.
paper, rule paper, whatever, doesn't matter. And you draw each screen you imagine your prototype to have, right? So we started with imagining your solution at the start of the webinar, right? So you would
Mm-hmm.
have imagined something that has to come down on paper now. You have to now, for example, you would draw a rectangle for the mandalas idea, and then it would just have a mandala. What else would it have? It would probably have a download button, so you could draw a button where you click on it, and then it will allow you to download. At the bottom, you can have like small circles which could represent the color palette. So the user can choose a color and then go and color a certain section in the mandala if they are editing the mandala uh,
Mm-hmm.
in the application. You
Mm-hmm.
might need an eraser because people will make a mistake that they didn't want that color
Yeah,
there to be
yeah. So wireframing is just about how to fit these in the screen that you
in the
have, right?
screen itself.
In
Yeah,
this, how does these fit? What goes where? And that will solidify your idea of what you're building, right? That will solidify how you're building. What does your app look like to people? And actually, you can show your wireframe to different people and get feedback from them
yeah.
on this apps look like this, and so can you give me feedback on how I mean, what could be better, uh, and you'll be able to also think about, is your wireframe or is your app covering all the must haves uh, that
So
that you have.
this was one of the wireframes from Agastya, where he identified that if I am having my pet stay with somebody else, that person needs to know everything about the pet. It's almost like a pet profile, right? The pet is having like a Facebook profile where
Mm-hmm.
you have the name of the pet, the breed of the pet, the registration
Mm-hmm.
number of the pet if needed,
Mm-hmm.
what is the age of the pet, how much do they weigh, what is the color of their fur, because it's important. It's possible that the pet may get lost, so
Mm-hmm.
you may want to know how does the color of the fur look like. uh,
Mm-hmm.
what is their favorite food, because eventually you'll have to feed them something when you are
Mm-hmm.
taking responsibility of that pet,
Mm-hmm.
and what to give them to keep them occupied. So these are some
Mm-hmm.
of the things he identified that a person might need to know. They would need
Mm-hmm.
to know all this. And this is one
Mm-hmm.
of the screens from his prototype.
Right.
Uh, And the square that you see there, which is next to the name of the pet, which is the name of the pet is Oreo, is the photo of the pet. So you have to take a photograph of a pet and make a profile. So this
Hmm.
is, I have made an application, but I have not written a line of code yet. I've just, like, 5 minutes, I just drew it and understood how it looks.
How it would look like,
Uh,
and
yeah,
that would be a good guide when you are actually building the app or
building it.
writing code
Yeah.
for it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So this is wireframing, and just like I said, at every stage. So we basically talked about detailing your solution, prototyping it, wireframing it. At every stage of the problem, at every stage of your idea execution, you will face these problems. You will have to discover a new problem. You will have to brainstorm on it. You will have to talk to users. You'll have to get feedback. So at every stage, you will have to go through this cycle of finding a problem, solving it, brainstorming on it, getting feedback, and talking to users.
So
Yeah.
this is solving a problem within a problem. So you
Hmm.
have a larger problem, and then within it you have sub problems,
Right.
which actually constitute the whole. You have to keep on solving each of them to solve the whole thing.
Hmm. Hmm. All right. So yeah. So that's a cycle which you will start to sort of like internalize. You'll start to adopt that every time you're working on something, you understand, you try to identify where is the problem, you think more about it, brainstorm on it, talk to users to understand deeply, get feedback, and this you will start to solve like any kind of problem through this way.
And once or twice you follow it, it may look like, I mean, it's too much work, but it'll start to become a habit, and then you will naturally do it. I think it will come naturally to everyone. Just that you
Right.
have to just get into the habit of doing.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. So So, homework, time for homework. What we want you to do after this session is detail one of your ideas. So, take one of your ideas and detail it, add details to it. You can do thought experiments using these ideas, using your idea, but like write your idea in complete detail. Then build a prototype for it. Prototype is again just executing your idea without building any tech in it. Collect all the learnings that you have, collect whatever you learned, and then we wanted to identify at in what process tech can actually help. So identify how tech can help in executing your idea, executing your solution, and then what we want you to do is build a prototype and wireframe your idea. So that is where we want you to be before our next session. Our next session is on actually how to start coding for your app. So how to code your prototype, how to choose a platform, how to build it. But before that, we want you to have at least a wireframe of your
Wireframe, yeah.
application ready. You should have a solution in your head, what solution you're actually building, what I mean, what would the idea look like? Is it something that actually will help, or is it just another solution? So you should have a wireframe of your app ready, what you're building, solution ready. You should have tested it out with some people. That's the stage at which you should be before the next session. All right, Rupin, would you like to add anything?
So what I would like to add is, when you are thinking about your solution, you may say, "Oh, I have a unique solution," or you know what, somebody else is already doing it. Don't get
Mhm.
discouraged by that somebody is doing it, because like how we have an Amazon, we also have a Flipkart and a Myntra, right? It's important to think that multiple solutions to the same problem can exist. It's
Mhm.
not like because somebody has done it, I should not do it. What you really bring as an individual is your own unique experience of doing it, and your own conversations with the users, right? And that really puts you on a different path than somebody
Mhm.
else who is already doing it. You may
Mhm.
want to learn from them, but you may not want to get discouraged that they have done it. So
Right.
that's one of the things. And the part that I want to also emphasize on the thing that only tech is a part of the solution. Now, if we take the example of Swiggy, which is the food delivery app, the app itself is one part of the the whole problem. So the whole problem is, how do you get food to people from restaurants? That's the problem that they started with. How do you start food deliveries? But the solution, the app plays a very small part. The drivers are one part to the solution. The restaurants are one part of the solution.
Yeah. So for
Uh,
example, the app doesn't cook, right?
yeah, the app doesn't cook. The app can't cook for you. So you have to consider that the app is one part of the larger problem,
Mhm.
which is trying to solve. So make sure you have that perspective in mind, that the app can't solve everything.
Right.
You have to think beyond the app as well.
Mhm.
That's what makes like a one complete package, solid, powerful idea.
Right. Right. That's a very good solution. That's a very good sort of example, and you can look at different companies, different apps, or they're just basically solving a part of a solution. Like they are not the solution, or most of the times they are not the solution.
True.
Right. All right. I think we're ready to take questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Um, yeah, we're still waiting for. Okay. So the first question: what is prototype? What is prototype? What is the difference between prototype and prototype? So if I try to summarize again, prototype is a solution without, it need not have tech in it. So it need not be a technology oriented solution, right? So when you are talking about a prototype, it can be it can be what you are solving. It can be so you can set up some false props to be able to solve the problem. So for example, if I talk about the IBM example, the IBM set up a human for as a pseudo of or a false prop for the whole
A smart computer solution.
speech to text, yeah, speech to text converter. So you can start executing it without actually building the whole solution, or without building any solution to a problem. So prototyping is just testing waters, like testing out your idea, right? Like start testing whether this idea will work, and that will give you learnings enough to think about what your product will look like, what your actual product will look like, and that is a prototype. When you're thinking about your whole finished product, for example, this idea of having a human behind every computer is not feasible. That's not a solution. That's not a product, right? So that's a prototype. When you think about your product, when you envision your product, what your product will look like, and what are the features that you would like to build in a product, that is a prototype solution.
So I have something to add to that. So the difference between prototype and prototype, the prototype will answer, am I building the right solution?
Hmm.
The prototype will answer, am I building the solution right?
Right.
Right? So am I building the right thing, and am I building the right thing correctly? So the prototype
Perfect.
will do the second part.
That's a good way of saying it. And if we take the Swiggy's example, Rupin, like for example, the prototype of Swiggy would be
Is a
just
phone call.
a phone
Phone call.
call. Yeah, just
Yeah,
a phone
phone call.
call. Like you actually call the restaurant and you get someone to deliver it.
Yeah,
That's a prototype for Swiggy, and the prototype would actually be what an app like this at scale would look like, right? That would
yeah,
be a prototype of it.
yeah.
Yeah. Can you submit your idea only if your idea is very hard to code and then get coaching for that idea? Uh,
No, so we'll have to accept an application. You have to apply the learnings of the what you have learned in your classes, and apply that to the idea that you have. If you believe that your idea is hard to code, I think what you are doing is you are including the must have, good to have, and not important together. Try and find out only that one part which is very, very important. Focus your energies on making it.
right. And I would recommend start building something. When you start building, you start to solve problems which you thought is unsolvable. So you start thinking around it. Follow that process of brainstorming, identifying what problem exactly you're facing, brainstorm on it, and then you start And then once you get into that flow, you will start understanding that even the problems which you thought unsolvable are actually solvable in some way. Okay, what is mandal and why do we have to use it? So you don't have to use a mandal. We were giving an example of uh, uh, uh,
Stages
of
is
how,
problem that
yeah,
we have
yeah,
to
yeah,
solve.
a problem that was talked about yesterday, and we were thinking about one solution would be so mandal are just colorful drawings which you can paint and which you can color, and it actually makes you feel good. So you don't have to use it. We were talking about
A solution. We were
one
talking
of
about
the
a solution.
solutions one of the solutions of how to make people feel good in these times of where there's
Negative news.
stressing news everywhere. Yeah. Can we make a website for app and how to submit it?
Yes, you can make a website for an app. You might know how to host it. Either you would do that on Drive to Web or you would do that on GitHub. The link to your code, it can be anywhere. You can just submit it
Right.
and give it to us. We'll figure out how to host it and see it. That's
Yeah.
not.
So to clear a misconceived notion, an application in computer parlance is any kind of computer program, right? It can be a game, it can be a website. Everything is called an app. And often in normal like we talk
Conversation.
only about smartphone apps,
Yeah.
but an application is anything. A website is also an application. A game is also an application. So when we talk about apps, we talk about a broad category of computer programs. What if our idea has already been made by someone? What will happen if two of the same ideas have been submitted? So an idea is actually just a beginning stage. I think it's more about how you execute it, how you build a solution around it. We don't judge only by idea. And obviously, like if two different people are building something, they'll obviously have two different approaches to build it. Like the whole solution cannot be the same. So again, we'll evaluate on a case by case basis on what is a better execution, and maybe both ideas can get selected if they have like two different and good approach to the solution. Should we have all the features of having in the app?
Build only the must have. What is the
Yeah.
most important that you want
Yeah,
to have?
we just talked about it just now, that you need not build everything in the app. You need not have a finished product. You can just build what is absolutely needed for the app to function, to be useful.
You
Yeah,
can use any of the labs. So Game Lab, App Lab, Sprite Lab. You can use Thunkable. You can use a website. It's up to you how you imagine what you are most comfortable with
yeah,
expressing the must have, the idea.
right,
I
right.
think
don't
it
don't
has.
don't make don't make a platform your constraint.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Don't make it.
don't yeah, yeah, like try to don't let it stop you from implementing what you really want to implement. Like use any kind of platform available. You can use anything that's there. What if we face a bug which is very difficult to solve and it is a must have? Rupin.
So uh, the right answer to this is that you will have to struggle and find out. It is part of the journey of learning how to code. That you have to learn how to debug a program that you have written.
Right,
It's something that you will have to uh, be observant. We talked about being observant. Think about this as a problem you have to solve.
right,
How do you observe? Apply the whole thing that you have learned from yesterday. I will observe. I will try and dig a little deeper. I will try and find out what is the nature of this problem. Why is it happening? And fix it and solve it.
right. So the debugging is a whole is kind of art, is a whole different kind of art, and the more you do it, the better you become at it.
Get at it. Yeah.
So yeah, so start identifying strategies which will help you debug your program. But in the end, if you're still not able to debug it, I would still advise you to go and submit the application, right?
Yeah.
And if the whole idea is really good and you have really tried hard and you have really tried to execute it well, I mean, we will obviously consider your idea, and will no, later the coaching and mentoring session will help you
Fix
sort
it.
of like create a, yeah, fix it.
Mm.
If I need it.
Uh, I think if it is needed, must have, you should have it. I mean, there's no question about it. So most of the platforms, so the code.org platform in AppLab and Firebase in Thunkable gives you access to a database. So that is something you'll have to add to your prototype if it is must needed. Yes.
Right.
You can build it on any platform. Like you can do it in HTML. It could be a website. It could be Thunkable. It could be AppLab. Whatever you know up till now, take all of that and apply it to this problem, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, the choosing of the platform is something you will have to do. It will come from your analysis of what is required in the must have.
Also,
uh,
what is your strength? Like where
what is your strength, what do you
yeah,
know really really well to do.
yeah.
So the platforms are what you have learned in the coding classes at WhiteHat. But naming a few, it would be AppLab. The other one would be Thunkable. If you are in the pro curriculum, you can also make the application within P5. It doesn't stop you from doing that. It's
P5
only
or React Native
or
if
React
you've
Native.
learned.
It's
Yeah.
just imagining how do I how do I communicate well and what are my strengths.
Mhm.
What
Great.
app do you recommend for doing the prototype? Pen and paper, quickest, fastest, easiest. But then, if you want to go a little deeper, you can, if you are good in, say, designing graphics, you can do it in a vector program. Maybe you can do it in Paint if you want to do. But then there is a website. It has a little learning curve. You'll have to get used to it. It's called Figma, Figma, which will allow you to make the wireframes. Once you are done with the wireframes, the prototype, of course, will be done in code. So whatever platform you are comfortable with, whatever your strength is, code.org, Thunkable, uh, P5, you can do it in React Native, uh, whichever it is. So the answer to that, the small answer that I've added is Figma, Figma. You can build your
I would recommend starting with paper and pen and
paper
then
and pen is very
moving
powerful.
on to these platforms. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Is wireframing similar to design in coding? Yeah, it's kind of design. It's more of like, yeah,
It's
you
the
design the.
creative aspect. It's, I think, the creative aspect of how do you
Yeah.
organize? How do you
Yeah.
organize?
Yeah. Will you judge the app design to win Silicon Valley?
Yes, we will.
It will be a part of
Yes, we
the
will. And
design.
that is
Yeah.
why the next class is on how do you really make a good looking app? What elements that go into it? Yes, so the design will determine certain aspects.
Yeah.
You can integrate a chatbot in your application. How to put Y and X axis for a label in Thunkable? Uh, So in Thunkable, you can change the X and the Y position of the label. It's possible, right? Oh, in code.org, it's possible. Yeah. So in Thunkable, what you will have to do is there is something called as positioning, which could be absolute, or there is something called as a fluid layout, uh, where it allows you to change the position of the label correctly. Use the rows and columns judiciously to keep your label where you want it to be. Learn about how does a column layout and a row layout allow you to design your application, because it's very very powerful way of arranging things. Yeah, we can have, I think, how do we do it? What if the prototype doesn't work while testing, but the code is perfect? Because it always happens with Unkable. Try and not use the live test. Try and test it on the phone.
Yeah, try and
The
test it on your phone. The live testing feature is what has more bugs.
Yeah, so there are times when the live test gives you a completely different user interface than it is on the phone. The phone is your master. Just make sure that it looks great on the phone. The live test is very quick testing if you want to do it. Phone, you can't really beat how it looks on the phone, because
Yeah,
that's how
and
it
we
is.
we also look at your code. So you also look at what you have written and how you're trying to execute your application. So
So there is actually this funny thing I tell a lot of my students is that the problem lies between the chair and the computer. So make sure you realize where the problem lies, and try and fix it from there.
hmm. Yes, oftentimes we have seen students who blame that something is not working in
Not
Thinkable
working.
or Coded.org, but actually the problem, yeah, yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, or my system is not working, but yeah, but
Yeah,
it's more of the logic and how you,
have
uh,
formulated it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think we can take one last question, and then are we allowed to use Adobe XD? What is Adobe XD?
So for yeah, Adobe XD is another tool like Figma, so which is used for prototyping. So for prototyping, you can use it, but again, you'll have to write code after you sort of like use design. So of course, you for prototype for wireframing, you can use any tool available. Uh, but for you have to end up writing the like the application for it. You have to code it. With limited blocks, we have learned we don't know if our idea can be executed through App Lab. Um, so again, in prototype, try to build something which tells us how you're actually going to, how that app will actually function. So maybe, for example, a lot of people are talking about app notifications and other stuff that might actually be a good to have feature and might not be a must have feature. And so try to sort of like sort of assume that some things are happening and some things are not, and maybe you can write about it, about what you're able to build through App Lab and what you are not able to build, and during mentoring and coaching sessions, will help you build the complete application.
I think the other way to look at that problem is to start reading documentation. So the
Yeah.
coder or documentation is extremely easy to understand
Mhm.
how it happens. So
Yeah.
you will be able to decipher what it is.
Yeah, and a lot of time we have to work with the tools we have, right? Like, so we have certain set of tools, and it can do certain things, and we have to work with it, and we can still come up with solutions which are out of the box, and which still solve what needs to be solved.
Solved.
So yeah, so work with the tools you have, and try and see what the tools can do. They can do maybe more than you think they can do, and then try to get things done. Yeah.
Okay, so this is like a very fundamental question. I think this should be the last question we answer. Uh, I'm still stuck with what problem am I supposed to work on? What should I do? Uh, Oh, so you are looking for inspiration. I think the inspiration one way is like we talked about in our first webinar is look around you. There are problems waiting to be solved. A very quick way. If you have access to today's newspaper, you just go through the newspaper. You'll find something which you align with, and it resonates with you. That's the first
Hmm.
way. The second way you can really look at it is sometimes we may think too deeply whether is this problem worth solving. There are sometimes you can just get started with something, but try and be open towards not being critical. Am I solving the right problem?
Right.
Try and start off, don't get into that loop, whether is this the right problem, am I solving the right problem. uh, if you get started, you will have those ideas come to you, and the what may look like not the right problem may absolutely be what you should be solving. The point I'm trying to make is get started on doing something different.
Right.
Read a newspaper, read a book that tells you something about it. uh, Look around you. I think one way to really discover a problem to solve is see what others are uh, like literally crying about. This needs to solve, this get needs to solve today. So
Right.
that is where
Right.
you find your inspiration.
Yeah. Another thing is that sometimes rephrasing your problem can also help.
Yeah,
So try to rephrase your problem, and as we talked about, try to see if it can be converted into a design challenge, and maybe get ideas from, as Rupin said, from everywhere else. So yeah, that's how you can. Rupin, we have one last question. Can
yeah,
we
yeah,
take that?
let's see that. Yeah, yeah.
Can I submit my completed app after submitting my prototype?
So the prototype is what will be used to evaluate whether that candidate, whether the child goes forward with the mentoring session. The mentoring session will, I'll give you an overview of what happens in the mentoring session. Every child struggles really hard in the mentoring, okay? Simply because the app requires a certain code to be learned. You may have not learned this in the classes that you have taken by now, but the mentors will really teach you how to do it, right? It's absolutely challenging. It's very challenging for a lot of students, the mentoring classes themselves. And it will make you realize how do you go from where you are to the completed application. The mentoring class will give you that knowledge of what are the gaps today in your knowledge which needs to be solved, and how can you take it from where your app is today to where it should be complete. That is covered in the mentoring, which we'll be doing 1:1 with every child.
Yeah, and of course, like the prototype will never get finished, right? The product is never finished, so you can always keep working on it, keep working on it, keep on making it better. So there is no such thing as completed app. Like it's always a work in progress. So
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 you
yeah,
either, I think, run out of time or you run out of money. That's the
yeah,
only time when you say this is complete. Otherwise,
right,
it's never complete.
right. All right. All right. I think that will be all. Thank you so much for attending the session on a Sunday morning. Um, really liked the questions that you posed today. I think wonderful questions, and I hope it helped everyone, all those who were attending. And we had a lovely time taking the session. And next session is Rupin. Next session is on next Saturday.
Yeah, next session is
So
on.
next session is on next Saturday, same time, and would love to get your feedback on the session. So maybe after this, there's a form that will be sent to everyone to collect feedback on the session. Your feedback will help us making the session better. So yeah. It's
Yeah,
next Sunday. It's next Sunday. I'm so sorry. Yeah. So it's the next Sunday. The next session is on next Sunday. All right. All right. That's all. That's all. We are ending the session. Thank you so much for uh, being a part of the
questions,
session.
and yeah. We thoroughly enjoyed. I think we learned more today than I think the other way around.
Yeah, just before closing, Mayank, are you taking? Are you going to talk something to the audience here?
Yeah, thank you so much, Rajiv. Thank you so much, Rupin, again for taking up time and discussing all the queries and definitely helping them and understand what the prototype mandals and how the entire work this design flow works. And thank you everyone for attending this on the Sunday morning. We'll catch up next Sunday the same time 10:30 a.m. onwards. And in the meantime, for those who have missed their tomorrow their yesterday's session, they can check their inbox. We have emailed the recordings for today's session. We'll email the recordings by evening. And for those whose questions have been unanswered, kindly go through the email wherein we have sent the entire FAQ doc, wherein you'll understand how and when and where to submit the idea and the prototype. And also, if few questions are there regarding the technical part, please refer the